it's so interesting, you guys, when it comes to men that are abusive. They act like you are absolutely nothing until you leave. Stop stalking me. Like, this is insane. You are literally a psychopath. I literally, in an instant, stopped loving this man. And I'm so grateful that God spared me that life of absolute heartache and torment and led me to the life I have now. Hey guys, welcome back to the House of Hughes. I am actually excited to sit down for today's video because of the incredible feedback that I got from part 1. Today I am going to be doing part 2 of the story about my abusive ex-boyfriend and my previous abusive relationship. If you have not seen part 1, I go over the details in that video about what it was really like being in a relationship with someone who was emotionally, mentally, and physically abusive. In today's video, I am going to be sharing more details about what it was like being in a relationship with him and how I eventually found the strength and courage to leave, and some of the events that transpired after we broke up. It gets a little bit crazy. There was some serious issues following the relationship that were difficult to navigate, but I'm looking forward to sharing it with you guys because I find so much strength in this part of my experience. I'm so proud of the girl that I'm about to tell you about. And again, I so appreciate all of the wonderful feedback that I got on part 1. So if you haven't seen that yet, I will go ahead and leave a card up here for you guys to go and check it out. And I highly recommend that you do that before watching today's video. I briefly mentioned in part 1 that my ex-boyfriend and I, and again, just like I did in part 1, I'm just going to refer to him as him or he. And if I'm talking about anybody else, I will clarify and say their name. But we were together and lived together for about 2 years. And about a year after we were together, we ended up having a breakup, and this was like an official breakup. I moved out of his apartment and went and lived with my parents at the time, and we were apart for about 2 months. In that time frame, I knew that he was seeing other girls. He actually would talk to me when we ran into each other at the gym, and we always ended up like going out to his car and like sitting in the car and talking and like catching up. I was still very devastated. Like, I really wanted to still be with him at that time. And he would sit there and tell me about Tinder and like all of the apps that he was using. He also literally told me that he had had sex with a girl who was super skinny and had an eating disorder. And he knew my history. He knew I was literally in eating disorder treatment. And it was obviously so devastating for me to hear that, but he would quite literally, when we were broken up, tell me about the sex and the experiences that he was having with other women. In the same breath, he would ask me if I was seeing anybody, and he would tell me how important it was to him that I was not intimate with anybody else. And I really believe that that was a huge factor of control and power in our relationship. I think he felt very special and like I belonged to him because of that intimate part of me that nobody else had had. I know we're just like really diving into the deep stuff right off the bat, but this part of the experience that I had just is mind-blowing to me. So I am still like begging for him back in the middle of this first initial breakup that was, again, about a year into our relationship. And I had a couple really good friends that I worked with, and they were so sweet and invited me to go do things with them. And I started to develop like friendships outside of the world that I lived in just with my ex-boyfriend. And I really started getting my footing. I even started dating somebody just briefly, and I went on a few dates with a few different guys, and one guy was a little bit more consistent. And ironically enough, he literally had the same name as my ex-boyfriend, so that kind of messed with me a little bit. But he was like the sweetest, kindest guy ever. I just was like not in a position to give my heart away because my heart still belonged to my ex-boyfriend at the time. Shoot guys, I am so sorry. My battery just died, and I hate it when my battery dies in the middle of videos because no matter what, I feel like it always looks different when I switch out my battery and turn the camera back on, whether that's lighting or just like the way the camera's angled. So I'm super sorry about that. But I was saying that I was starting to date people in the midst of that first initial breakup, and I was really unable to experience dating the way that I should have because I was still being so manipulated behind the scenes. And the manipulation was honestly so bad that he would go out with different women and sleep with them and see them, and then he would call me and tell me that he was literally outside my parents' house, ask me to come out to his car in the middle of the night. Of course, I would jump and run because I just didn't have a self-esteem, and I'm really disappointed in some of the decisions that I made, but I also cut myself a big break because I know what was going on behind the scenes dealing with my eating disorder and being so manipulated. Usually I'm not one to victimize myself, but I will definitely admit that I was a victim in this case. So I would go out to his car in the middle of the night, and he would tell me all of these wonderful things about me, tell me that he missed me. He would tell me that when he was sleeping with these other women that he just wished it was me and missed me so much. And then he would manipulate me into being intimate with him. And the second we were finished, he would literally tell me, okay, I'm leaving, like, get out of the car, you know we're not getting back together. And it would literally rip my heart and soul out. I felt like the most used girl in the world. I just felt so disgusted with myself, so manipulated. And in my first video, these were some details that I wanted to share, but I just felt uncomfortable sharing it because I'm not one to like talk about those intimate details. And especially with it being with someone who I have zero love or care for, it's embarrassing to talk about. But after the response I got back from the first video, like, I felt like it was important to explain to you guys some of the emotional manipulation that went into that first breakup. After a couple months had passed of us being apart, not living together, but him still meeting up with me, getting what he wanted, and then telling me I was basically worthless, and telling me about all of the other women that he was seeing, he actually showed up at my work. I will never forget this. It was literally like a movie. It's so frustrating to think about because I was finally getting my footing. I was going longer and longer periods of time without talking to him by my own choice. And I feel like I was just like right at that point where I was going to turn a corner and like really emotionally leave that person for good. And I walked outside, it was pouring rain. He was literally sitting on the back of my car, just like literally a movie scene. He basically just professed his love to me, said that he wanted me back, said that he hasn't been whole since we've been together, like all of this junk and crap. And he actually called my dad right in front of me, telling him that he loved me and that he wanted me back. And there are very few times in my life where I have heard my dad curse the way that he did on that phone call and just rip someone apart for hurting his daughter. And just like shout out to Glenn Arnell because this poor guy was getting like freaking whiplash from my own emotions. As a parent, I can only imagine how frustrating that was, but at the end of the day, like, I had to make my own decisions. I had to navigate this. I was an adult at this point. So long story short, we ended up talking there for a couple hours, and I ended up going home with him, moved back in, and we ended up getting back together. Now, I will admit that I had the upper hand in our relationship for the very first time following that breakup. I told him that he had to move in order for me to stay in that relationship because he was sleeping with a girl who actually lived in that apartment complex, who was a friend of a friend who had literally like come over to our apartment when we were together to hang out. Just, it was a disgusting situation. One thing that was just like so devastating is that not only would he tell me about these other women, he would give me like intimate details, and he would also just like completely shame them. He would talk about their bodies horribly. He would talk about just how horrible it was to be with them. And I'm a smart woman. I knew that if he was saying these things about these women, he was obviously saying these things about me to other women. And it just really attests to his character and who he was. We were together for about a year. Well, it was really more like 9 months after that initial breakup, and I actually never like officially moved back in with him, but I was like basically living with him. I like never went home to my parents. I had like stuff at his place, and as time went on, he just fell back into who he really was. He got more and more comfortable, and I started finding messages again on his phone. I remember I took his phone when he was in the shower once, and he was, of course, talking to another woman, and when I addressed him about it, he told me that she had children, so he would never be interested because that meant that she wasn't, you know, small down there. And that is probably the most insulting, disgusting, untrue thing that you can say about a woman. And also, might I add, literally F you plus multiple words that I do not say on my channel to any man that thinks a woman's body is not more beautiful after she has children. So I would just like to throw that in there. Things started to come up, you know, more and more consistently about other women. I realized that as this relationship was progressing, that, you know, I was just getting like more and more involved and more attached. And I really just like couldn't see a life outside of him. And I also really wanted to get married. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have children. He knew this was the goal of mine, and he would talk to me about having kids with me, about having a marriage with me. And he would also, of course, always throw in, you know, it's unnatural to be with one person for the rest of your life. And, you know, he really isn't monogamous, and he didn't know how to say that properly. But it's not like he's made a decision to live a different type of lifestyle. He is just like a serial cheater. He pretends to be monogamous and just like wrecks women's hearts and soul. But he was constantly telling me that we were getting like closer and closer to an engagement, that we were getting closer and closer to starting our life together. So it got to the point where it was obvious that I was always much more in love with him than he was with me. And now I try to swap the word love for attachment, because that's really what it was. I just swapped one addiction for another. He would tell me when we argued, you know, no one will ever love you. No one will ever put up with you. No one will ever want to marry you. He would even make comments about how men prior in my life had chosen women over me and how it was so obvious, and there were multiple reasons why those men would do that. And he told me at one point that like my own father didn't love me, which is just like laughable. It's like an ongoing joke in my family that I am forever my father's favorite. I will say that boy, not a man, said a lot of things to me that I believed, and that was never one of them. But one morning, my dad and I were driving somewhere together. I think that he was like taking me to work or something, and we were having a conversation, and I knew that it destroyed my father that I was dating this guy for obvious reason. Like, I can't even imagine Blakely being in this situation and me just having to suck up the fact that I can't make decisions for her. And, you know, he just had a heart-to-heart with me about what I wanted my future to look like and the decisions that I was gonna have to make if I wanted to put myself first. I will never forget, I walked into work that day and I called my older brother on the phone. I said to him, okay, so I need to tell you something, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to follow through with it, and I feel like you're the one safe person I can tell who will love me even if I don't end up having the strength to do this. But I just said, I think I'm gonna break up with my ex-boyfriend today. And my brother said, Rach, I am so proud of you. Thank you so much for telling me this. I will be here for you every step of the way. And I want you to know that even if you don't do it, I'm still so proud of you for trying. And it's just so sweet to look back and know that my brother was literally telling me, like, I think you and I both know that's never gonna happen, but great job. Even just telling yourself that you deserve more. Like, that's where we were at emotionally. The day went on, and my ex-boyfriend actually ended up coming over to my parents' house, which was very shocking. He wasn't welcome at my parents' house. It was always very uncomfortable, but for some reason I didn't go up to his place that day after work, and he ended up coming over. We went downstairs into my bedroom. He was just laying on my bed and I was sitting up, and we were talking about his work and his job. And I remember looking at him and feeling absolutely nothing. It was literally like God just removed my heart and replaced it with another one. I've never, to this day, had an experience that would literally be described as a change of heart. I literally, in an instant, stopped loving this man immediately. And I looked at him and I just said, you know, I don't think that we should be in a relationship anymore. I don't think that we want the same things, and I think we just need to move forward with our lives. And the shock on his face, I had never even entertained the idea of us being apart. We had obviously gotten in big fights. We had obviously had a terrible relationship up to this point, but our dynamic was him trying to leave me, him abusing me, and me begging for him to love me begging for his affection, begging for his time. And I just remember like the shock, like he was speechless. And I just said, I'll walk you out. And I walked him out to my parents' front porch. He looked at me and he said, Rach, you're making a mistake. And immediately, you guys, like a voice, like I am talking to you right now, said to me, he is not the father of your children. And that was all I needed. And it's so interesting to look back on, because I full-heartedly believe that my kids were with me on that front porch that day. I really feel like they pleaded for me with God, that they told God, you know, you're gonna have to help her out because we need this woman to find our dad. When that voice said to me, he is not the father of your children, I looked at him and I said, I know I'm not making a mistake. He walked off my porch that day. I have never once looked back. I've never questioned my decision, and I've been a different woman since that day. So shout out to Beckham and Blakely for coming in clutch and fighting for me and their daddy to make sure that I got my ish together in time to meet Hunter, because that was what broke it for me. That's what made my heart change in an instant, because I couldn't leave that relationship for myself. I literally couldn't. I didn't have it in me. I didn't have the strength. But when it came to my kids, my children, even without knowing them, my love for them was so great that I knew in order for me to get them, it was through a different man. And I literally like can't even say that without being giddy, because I'm so in love with my husband. And I'm so grateful that God spared me that life of absolute heartache and torment and led me to the life I have now with a nearly perfect individual. I mean, if you guys have seen any of my videos, you know Hunter is close to perfect. So that's like a whole different tangent that I could go on for literally ever. But I want to get into some of the aftermath of this breakup. So he left and I walked back into my parents' house. My little brother and my mom were in the kitchen, and my mom asked me, is so-and-so going to stay for dinner? And I literally just looked at her dead in the face and I said, I just broke up with him. And my mother, like I'm talking jaw dropped. My little brother was sitting at the computer and had headphones in, and he literally takes his headphones off and looks at me, jumps up, runs and tackles me to the floor. He was so proud of me. He was also like 16 at the time. That's how drastic the situation was. And my mom came over and gave me the biggest hug, and then my dad walked in the door. My dad and my ex-boyfriend actually passed each other on the road, him leaving the house and my dad getting home, and they just like absolutely hated each other. So it's just hysterical thinking about it. I'm like, that was just like the cherry on top that he had to look my dad in the eyes one last time. My dad walked in the door and my mom said, you need to go give your daughter a hug. And I told my dad what happened, and he gave me the biggest hug. And no joke, we went out to celebrate. We all went out to get ice cream, and my dad was literally on the phone with the Verizon within 5 minutes of me breaking up with this guy, changing my phone number and getting his phone number blocked. We had to do both because it was pretty extreme. We knew the patterns that he had in the past. And you know, I wasn't dumb. I knew that this wasn't going to be like an amicable breakup. And so I was like, I need a new phone number, like immediately, because even though I was feeling 100% and great right then, I was like, what if I wake up tomorrow and I'm sad? Like, I just want to prepare. But what was so odd was I literally didn't love him anymore. And I don't know what to say. I loved him that morning, but God just immediately changed my heart when I saw him. So I got a new phone number, went out and celebrated with the family, got some ice cream, and then I went to work the next day as if nothing had happened to me. And I remember everyone at work congratulating me because they knew he was the biggest POS, and everyone was literally so happy for me. Everyone in my life was just like ecstatic. And the very next day, the day after we broke up, I went to the gym and a guy asked me out that day. And then I met another guy that asked me out for the upcoming weekend, which was Valentine's Day. So within a matter of hours, God put 2 different men in my life. Neither were Hunter, but they were both wonderful men. And they both sent me flowers that week, took me out on multiple dates, and I felt more love on that Valentine's Day than I had ever felt in my entire life. And I had made the hardest decision I had probably ever made up to that point in my life, the week of Valentine's Day, the day that's all about love, the day that I was so afraid to feel so lonely. And I just look back and I just think, you know, God's really freaking got you. He really does. Like, he didn't just change my heart. He made sure to let me know that I was beautiful, desired, wanted, loved in the blink of an eye. He didn't make me feel lonely or make me sit in my loneliness for 1 second. I think of an eternal father and what he would do for his child. And I feel like he just like picked up the pieces of a broken little girl and just put them back together and made me whole. And I'm so grateful for that. It's just one of those experiences where it's a testament to me personally that God lives. Holy guacamole, I've been talking for 21 minutes and I already had like 10 minutes before my battery died. So this is gonna be a really long video, but I really wanna share all these details with you guys because I felt like I would never be able to leave. Like truly, the depths of what I felt, the fear of loneliness, were just proven wrong immediately. And sometimes it just takes that one little leap of faith to show God, like, I'm gonna jump, but you have to catch me. And he always does. He always does. So to whoever is listening to this that needs to take that leap of faith and jump, please do it. Trust that God is going to catch you, and I promise that he will. I promise. He has for me over and over and over again in my life. I also want you to remember that I still had a 2-year horrific relationship. He didn't just bail me out 1 month in. You know, I had lessons to learn. I had things I had to overcome. I had my agency. But at the end of the day, he still came and saved me. After I had changed my phone number and just started going to work like normal, I was still working out at the gym that I always had. And I had a very repetitive schedule. So my ex-boyfriend kind of knew what I was going to be doing basically at all times. I don't know if you guys know this, but in your phone, you can actually go to your messages and there's like a little folder at the bottom that says blocked messages. I didn't even know this existed until all of my blocked messages started coming in. And from the night we broke up, moving forward for literally like a couple months, he was sending me multiple voicemails a day. He was crying in the voicemails, telling me how much he loved me, how much he wanted me back. And it's so interesting, you guys, when it comes to men that are abusive, they act like you are absolutely nothing until you leave. They act like you are worthless, like you don't mean anything to them. I mean, this man never did a damn thing that would make me believe he ever loved me until we broke up. Then he acted like his entire world had stopped because I was no longer in it. He was literally calling me every day. It got so extreme that he literally changed his phone number and reached out to a mutual friend of ours to get my current phone number to get through to my phone, because even on my new phone number, I had blocked his phone. So he also needed a new number. He changed his number to get to my new number. It's crazy, it's insane. I mean, that's a lot for a guy who like really made you feel like crap and told you that he really didn't need you and that he really didn't love you. I'll never forget the phone call I got at like midnight, and this was like a month or two after we had broken up, and so I really, like, he wasn't on the forefront of my mind. I got this phone call and I didn't know the number, but I like even ask Hunter now, like, I'm like, answer the phone even if you don't know who it is. I'm just like that. I'm too nosy to not know. So I answered the phone and I just said hello, and he said, don't hang up. And immediately I knew it was him. Looking back, I should have just like hung up immediately, but I'll be honest, I had like no feelings towards him whatsoever, and I was just like, man, this guy is desperate. Like, this is honestly entertaining me at this point. And I kind of thought, like, you deserve a little bit of torture. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I wasn't my best self. I was kind of like, sure, sit there and cry over how much you love me, and I can tell you that I'm really loving my life and doing great without you. So he actually had like seen a Snapchat of mine or something. Like, his friends were like sending him stuff that I was doing, which is so creepy and weird. I don't know what's wrong with them, but they were literally like sending him stuff, and he got really upset that he saw that I was hanging out with another guy. And he literally had the nerve to ask me if I slept with this person. And I was just like, you're disgusting. That's none of your business. I wouldn't tell you whether I had or hadn't. But it's just so interesting how like that came into play even after our relationship. Like, he was so concerned about me being with anybody else. It just was that power, you know, that control. Like, I think he feared that I really no longer loved him, which I didn't. And I think he was just in shock. I remember in his voicemails, he would say, Rach, this isn't you. Like, you would never not talk to me. You would never go this long without speaking to me. Like, who's in your ear? Who's making you do this? It's so interesting. Like, even he didn't recognize me. And honestly, I didn't recognize myself, but that's who I truly was. The suppressed version of who I was and the sick version of who I was when I was with him. The real version and the true me is who I am now and who I was when I walked away from him. Not only was he harassing me over phone call, over email, I still have emails to this day. It's a little bit crazy. He also was following me in person. He actually went to the gym that I went to, and he stayed there the entire day. He said this to me himself. He said that he got there at like 9 in the morning and he waited until I showed up at like 3 p.m. after work. I went to go do like my first exercise, and he literally just walked up to me, and I was so embarrassed. I didn't want him to cause a scene. And so I just like walked out to the parking lot with him, and I felt safe at this point. And he literally just started begging for me, just started crying, just said, I would do anything for you to just come home with me. Like, you don't want this. Like, I don't know who these other guys are, but they don't love you. And he literally couldn't even see that he was still hurting me. Well, it didn't hurt because I didn't care, but he was still trying to hurt me, trying to manipulate me, even just when trying to win me back. He also so sweetly said that he felt like I had gotten too pretty, and that intimidated him because I wasn't pretty when we met. So that was sweet. And I literally, guys, listen, I'm not proud of this, but like maybe just a little bit. After all the hell I had been through, when he started crying, I literally started laughing. I couldn't help it. I just was like, is this a joke? I literally was like, look at you right now. You had 2 freaking years. 2 years. If you had proposed to me, I would have said yes. But you didn't want me. So now you don't have me. Man, I've just like never felt better than in those moments. And he told me that he had followed me up to my friend's house who lives in Salt Lake. Shout out to you, Kristen. And he had literally followed me there. If that's not the creepiest thing you've ever heard. He also told me that he drove past my parents' house and saw that there were a bunch of cars there and was like, oh my gosh, like, was it a guy? And I was just like, stop stalking me. Like, this is insane. You are literally a psychopath. And I just remember thinking, like, how crazy is he gonna get? I mean, when he got mad when we fought, because you have to remember, like, after the breakup, his front was to be sad, to be depressed, to beg for me back, to be sweet. Well, as sweet as he could be, because he stuck his foot in his mouth every other sentence. But it wasn't to be like really angry like he was when we got mad. But I knew the anger was in there. Like, I knew how he was when he lashed out. So I just thought, how long is this gonna last until you freak out and like do something to hurt me or hurt someone I love. Like, it was honestly scary. So at that point, my dad actually got his mom's phone number from a message that his mom sent to me, because his mom literally said, I think you did the right thing. Please don't put up with this. He's so messed up. That's literally what she said about her own son. Kind of sad. But his parents were always very kind to me. I never responded to her. It's just like so sad. Like, even she saw my position as a position of strength at this point. So my dad got her phone number from me and called her and just said, hey, just so you know, like, your grown adult son, I'm gonna put a restraining order on him for my daughter because he's stalking her. I keep almost saying his name. He actually already had a restraining order against him from his ex-wife. And if he got another one, I believe it was like understood that he would have to like go to court, or he could possibly do jail time or like something like that. And his mother, literally, this grown man's mother, begged my father to not get a restraining order put on him. And you have to remember, like, yes, I was an adult, but I was also only 19 at the time, and I needed like help from my parents. Like, I needed to feel loved and supported. And like, my dad, it doesn't matter how old I am, like, I'm always gonna be his baby girl. Like, obviously, if someone was harassing me and stalking me, he was gonna step in and be like, yo, I'm gonna put a stop to this. Which I'm glad he did, because my dad had told his mom, if he so much as breathes a word to her, if he tells someone to reach out to her on his behalf, I will file this immediately. And oh, I just said his name, oh my gosh. And my ex-boyfriend literally had the nerve to continue sending me voicemails. And in the voicemails, he said, I understand I'm not supposed to talk to you and that your dad is going to file a restraining order. But at that point, I'm not gonna lie, like, my dad and I were like listening to these messages, and it was like so desperate and so embarrassing that we were just like, you know what, whatever, I'm not in any danger. And they started to get like fewer and fewer. I could tell that like he was losing his fire, you know what I mean? His motivation. Even more came out about him after we broke up. I actually had someone come up to me who I knew from the gym tell me that he had actually seen my ex-boyfriend the Christmas before, which was only a couple months prior to that, and that he had actually seen him out shopping with another woman and her daughter. And I knew exactly the day that he was talking about, because we had like split up on a day where we both went Christmas shopping for each other, but not together. And he was like, we ran into each other, and it was the most awkward encounter, because he knew that I knew that this was not you, and I knew you two were still together. And to be honest, like, I didn't know like what to do. And so I'm so sorry I never said anything. I didn't want to like disrespect you. And this guy like really didn't know me. And so the fact that he came up and told me this, he might've followed me on social media and had seen that I had like deleted all of our photos or something. He knew that we had broken up at this point. I was just like, oh yeah, I know who that was. And just to clarify, I know that him and his ex-wife had a daughter together. This was not her. She didn't live here at the time. She also wanted less to do with him than I even did. But this was the woman that he bought the weight loss pills from to give to me, you know, so sweet of him, who was also married at the time. Perfect couple, you know, perfect match. Honestly, how can you blame them? So even more was coming out, and it actually got so bad, it got to a point where his best friend actually called me and told me that he was contemplating taking his own life. And I'm so sorry if that's a trigger for anybody, but of course in this situation it's, you know, a little bit different. He was definitely using it as leverage to manipulate me, and I was actually brave enough to say to him, you know, never contact me again. If your best friend is having these thoughts and struggling with mental illness, then you need to get him help. It's not my responsibility to get him help. And I actually hung up on him and said, you know, it's not my responsibility, and I really recommend that you get him help. In that same phone call, he also said, Rachel, he always wanted to sleep with other girls, but he never actually did. And I was like, wow, number one, you're a liar. And number two, was that supposed to be endearing? Are you trying to comfort me with that sentence? Like, I swear they just both weren't all there, if you know what I mean. Him and his best friend, just two peas in a pod, you know what I'm saying? As time went on, you know, I heard less and less from him, which was wonderful. And I really just started to move on with my life. Him and I actually broke up in February. And then in December, 10 short months later, I met the love of my life, Hunter. I met my husband. and we got engaged very quickly. It was surprising, but I was ready and it was the right thing to do. You guys can go watch our crazy engagement story because it's like seriously wild. We got engaged and I actually got an email from my ex-boyfriend congratulating me on the engagement, which really freaked me out because I had no idea how he knew that I got engaged. The guy was a creep, you guys, I'm telling you. I ended up showing Hunter this email, obviously, and I had already deleted like all of the blocked voicemails because I just wanted to move on with my life, and I deleted them after I hadn't heard from him for a few months, so I felt like it was safe to do that. After he reached out to me about the engagement, he also reached out to me again via email, and this is the great one, you guys. I seriously have to read you part of this because this email was kind enough to be addressed to Hunter and I. You will die. The email's kind of long, so I'm not gonna read it, but I'm actually gonna put like screenshots up here on the screen. So I want you guys to literally just pause this video and I want you to read this email that he sent me and my husband. And I must add that this man literally called my husband brother, like as if they were homies. And then he literally in this email still tried to act like I belonged to him. Like he was like giving me away to my husband. Just like so ridiculous. My husband and I had been married for 2 years at this point. So just like the secondhand embarrassment that I feel that I was ever associated with this person is like severe at this point. So that email back in 2018 is actually the last time that I heard from him. Well, actually, side story, there's like this whole other time that I heard from him. And it's because his ex-girlfriend after me actually reached out to me. That's wild too. You know what? Why not? I'm just gonna bleep out her name and I won't say it, and I'll also like erase it on these messages. But the only other time he reached out to me after that email to Hunter and I was when I actually had a conversation with his now ex-girlfriend, but it was the girlfriend after me, about his abuse and the way that he treated me because of questions that she was asking. And I'm actually going to screenshot like the original message that she sent to me, and of course I'll cross out her name for her own privacy. I want you guys to pause the video and read this message as well so that you can see his abusive patterns and just how desperate this sweet girl was to get out of a relationship with him. After I talked to her, he sent me a message on Facebook Messenger, and he like creates and deletes accounts all the time, so it's literally like I don't have the time to keep up with continuing to block him. And he literally just said thanks with an exclamation mark, and I never responded. So a really important part to all of this is that all of this harassment and stalking and all of these messages that I received after we broke up, he literally never heard from me, ever, not one time. I could have been dead for all he knew. I never responded to an email. I never responded to a message. I never responded to a phone call, aside from that one phone call when it was an unknown number after he had switched his number. I picked up the phone because I didn't know it was him. And then when I saw him in person, when he had stalked me and found me working out. So that was uncomfortable. I made it, you know, very clear that I had no interest in him anymore. I didn't love him. I never wanted to see him again. And then obviously that was made extremely clear when I was like, am I literally gonna have to get the law involved? Let's just be adults, you know, this is ridiculous. I felt that a huge part of my power was the fact that he never heard from me. I am still so proud of that. And to be honest, that's a big reason that I waited so long to make these videos, because in an odd way, like I don't want this to come across as like a response to him. Like, he is absolutely nothing to me. He doesn't matter to me. That's not to say that every human being on this earth matters and is here for a purpose, and all I can really hope for him is that he gets the help that he needs, but I don't think that seems very promising with his patterns. But of course, I believe in the grace of God, and you know, I really hope that he gets the help that he needs. But in no way am I addressing him in this video or in part 1. And because of the pattern of him finding out what I do and seeing my stuff, I am not going to be surprised if I get another email from him, if he tries to reach out to me again. But I think he's figured out at this point that he will quite literally never get a response from me. And I'm really proud of that. You know, it's not worth my time. He doesn't deserve another second of my attention. I gave him plenty, and all it did was harm me. And that was a really, really important part of my healing. That is something that I would highly suggest that you consider if you are trying to get just a clean cut from somebody who was harmful to you. Blocking all communication and really standing firm and standing your ground was a huge reason that I healed so quickly, and it also made me come across as the very strong woman that I am. And honestly, I think it shocked him. I'm proud of myself that it really didn't shock me. Like, I knew I had it in me, it just took me a while to find it, and I really needed God's help. I know that not everybody is granted the severe change of heart that I was granted. But I strongly believe that I spent so much time mourning in that 2-year relationship that by the time I left, I had been so beaten down at that point, emotionally and mentally, that I was ready to get my life back. I was ready to move forward. But that doesn't mean that if you're in a situation like this, that it's going to be easy. But all I can promise you is that God really does have you. And if you choose to be brave like Beckham, I promise that he will deliver you. I promise that you will look back and be so proud of the woman that left, of the woman that stood up for herself, of the woman that chose to love herself and love her future self more than anybody else. I look at my kids and I just think, how different would my life be had I never left that relationship? I look at Hunter and I just think, boy, he would have been snatched up in 2 seconds had I not swooped in when I did. And he would be allowing some other woman to live her dream by being married to them had I not ended and left that relationship. There is just so much life outside of abuse. I've told you guys that there's so much life outside of addiction. There just is so much life past and beyond what we can see, and that's why we have God to remind us that he sees the big picture. It is never too late to leave. It is never too late to change your mind. It's never too late to turn a new leaf and start a new life. And I really hope that my story is able to encourage or inspire you to do the same, because I promise that I never thought that girl was going to be able to do that. I really didn't, but I did. And I'm so proud of that and so grateful that I'm sitting here and can share this with you guys. I hope that you enjoyed part 2 of my video. I am going to do, I think, a Q&A, and I think that will kind of like tie up this little series. But I think I shared everything that I want to share, everything that I'm comfortable sharing. But I do want to open up the comment section. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and I will be answering them in a Q&A specifically about that relationship. You can ask any questions in regards to him and I, in regards to how he affects my relationship with my husband now, in regards to our breakup, getting back together, the abuse, etc. But I want to thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. I know it's different from my usual content, but it means so much to me that you would take the time to listen and take the time to support me. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit that red subscribe button down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so it can reach the people that it needs to reach. I love you guys, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.